Greetings, this is the Garage Autonomist. Voting. It is a principal decision we as black folks should make since so many of our elders have fought and died for our right to vote. New Possibilities has illustrated this very well in his voting series critiquing the Don't Vote campaign headed up by certain popular YouTubers who also have notoriety in the meatverse. When I was younger and an activist, I came from the radical left position that electoral politics was reform, or rather, reformist cloud chasing. It was about tricking people into voting for politicians who stood on opposite platforms, but were actually two faces on the same coin. So in other words, we weren't supposed to, or we shouldn't, have participated in electoral politics since it is what the ruling class wanted us to do, and those two ruling class politicians worked for the ruling class. I got older and I began to think differently about this. Now, as an aside, Pinhead Blackson did a video on this issue as well, and I have it on my watch list for later during tonight's commute. I have not had a chance to get to it yet. So hopefully it'll be an awesome video, as most of his videos are. Anyway, you see, nothing is black and white or either or. It's ridiculous to hang social change all on voting. Voting is a tool and a method to be used as part of the larger means to make social change, along with direct action, movement building, and consciousness raising. There is nothing to say that we cannot do both. In my day, some of my ex-comrades were the type of people who felt that to get caught up in an election year was counterproductive and a distraction. Looking back, that was silly, because we were involved in building movements, whether it was to get someone unfairly railroaded off of death row or reversing a ruling to let a killer cop go free. Participating in an election was not the end of the world. Now, I vote when I want to, and typically when an election is critical or when a candidate I believe is truly going to make a mark, and I hear a hint of my politics between the lines of those speeches. But I do not see voting as the only way for us to make major change in society when both political parties, politicians, are indeed heavily influenced by corporations and the ruling class. It's a fatal mistake to do that, just as not doing anything at all, like turning away from activism, to make social change. I can go on and on about the Democrats and how they've worked with the Republicans to reverse hard-won gains by labor, women, and people of color since the 1960s. Hillary's voting record, again, very well illustrated by New Possibilities in his episode about Hillary Clinton, looks very much like a Republican's voting record. And so, having said that, I can definitely tell you that I understand where the pessimism and the popular view that the electoral process is quote-unquote rigged and seemingly hopeless and impenetrable. First, we should look at the voting laws and the processes that are currently in place. I have worked on 5 different independent electoral campaigns. 2 were presidential, 2 were mayoral, 1 was an independent campaign for governor's office in Texas. The first painful fact you learn is that whether you are a Democrat, a Republican, and especially an independent, is that in order for you to get on a ballot, you have to have a certain amount of money or a certain amount of signatures on a petition to put yourself on a ballot. Depending on your city or state, the amount of signatures needed on a petition for a ballot will vary. If memory serves, for mayor of Houston, you needed 50,000 names of people who were registered voters and living in their current addresses upon signing the petition. From that alone, you can understand why regular folks are kept from actually running, because you would have to pay double the amount of those signatures in dollars to be able to get your name on the ballot without having to launch a petition campaign. After that, You have to check those names, by the way, before submitting them to your local board. I might be very conservative about those 50,000 names. If anything, I bet it was probably 150,000. I can't, I'm old as shit now. I can't remember nothing. Now, I will say that this rule could very well be challenged by politicians and legislators. But as we know, most of our governing bodies of power are made up of folks from these parties, and they benefit from this set system. I just want to point out that the work that's cut out for one who wants to make change to the electoral process so that elections could be more fair and open. It's there. It can be changed. It's workable. But those are the kinds of things we want to focus on if we feel that elections are rigged. So it's not about just voting for the right person to get in and make these changes. We have to sit and we have to study how the system works. And then we have to figure out what's the best determined place to go to. I don't vote Democrat and I don't vote Republican. I have for a long time voted for various socialist runners. When Obama ran, I voted for Cynthia McKinley of the Green Party. Prior to the actual election of 2008, I switched my registration, or rather switched parties from, I think, independent to green. And you can do that. If you're not aware that you can do that, you should. And sit down and look at everybody who's on the ballot. You can go on your website of your local city and town and state or whatever is up for election and just see who all is running. This time around, I might vote for Bernie as a big fuck you to the Democrats, who the centrists within that party are doing everything they can to swing things Hillary's way before the primaries. I'd rather vote for someone who I think might respond to the pressure of those of us who are progressive. And if that vote went to someone who lost in the primary or the election, I'd still feel better that I gave them my vote rather than Hillary or Trump. And when the fanfare is over with, I will do what me and my family and friends always do. We pick up the hammer and we go to work again as activists. Because as I said before, it's not always about elections and voting for us. If one tool doesn't get us what we want, then it's time to pick up another. So that's the answer to reform or revolution. We can use reform to make revolution, or we can either have to do revolution in order to get reform. So I don't know. I hope this my take on this is helpful. As again, between Pinheads, Blackson, and New Possibilities, so far they only had I've only seen these two coherent and strong arguments for electoral politics, for voting. I have not seen any other that has been coherent and or articulate. Just tell me what you think. And of course, I'm open to debate. There is no censorship here on this channel. This is the Garage Autonomist.